Hello and welcome.
I'm Victoria.
I'm Serena, and together we're Femme Noir.
This show is all about women, specifically in film.
We are going to review and analyze movies that are written by, directed by, or starring women, and we cannot wait for you to join us. Tune in and listen wherever you listen to podcasts, or join us on YouTube. Yeah, thank you for coming. Today we're talking about the movie The Old Guard, which is on Netflix.
The Old Guard is a movie that came out in the year 2020, written by Greg Rucka and directed by Gina Prince Bythewood. The film stars Charlize Theron as Andy, Kiki Lane as Niall, and Harry Melling as the antagonist, Stephen Mellick. The film follows a covert group of tight-knit mercenaries led by Andy with a mysterious inability to die. When the team is recruited to take on an emergency mission and have their powers exposed, it is up to Andy and Niall to help the group eliminate the threat of those who seek to replicate and monetize their power by any means necessary. We're going to start off by talking about our impressions based on the trailer and advertisements done for the movie. Then we'll go into talking about the movie as a whole. Then later, we've been doing this up until this point, so this is our fourth recording, and I have not explained that every episode we do an FMF, so we're going to do a Fuck, Marry, Friend Zone corner, and we have been doing it, but I've never explained it, so I'm now explaining that we will be doing that. We'll be analyzing the film based on whether or not it passes the Bechdel test, and then we'll give our final scores of the movie, and then give you some recommendations of similar movies if you liked The Old Guard. So we'll start off with trailers. I did not know this movie was coming at all. It just one day was on Netflix, and I was like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah, I also just saw, like, I think it popped up on, like, that when you first enter your Netflix, and it has that, like, screen that just kind of randomly plays whatever they're featuring.
Yeah, like auto
and that was
plays.
one of them. And I was like, oh, it's Charlize Theron. And then I was like, what movie is this? And then I watched the trailer and was like, oh, that seems pretty cool. And I'm pretty sure I just watched it that day.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it was because I was so interested. It hit all my
I was like, this looks so cool.
That actually is an advertisement, I guess, in and of itself, is that banner.
It worked 100%.
They showed her,
I immediately was like, yes.
Yeah, they showed her
and
being badass, and I was sold.
I watched it twice that day because I didn't finish it. It was that one day, our family, we do like a family call with my grandparents and my aunt and uncle and my other aunt and I think my great aunt. And so it was a Sunday and I sat down to watch it, and I was watching it just by myself, like in the main like living room section that we have. And because I live with my parents because of COVID and everything. And I got maybe about up until 30 minutes to the end. And I actually remember like thinking, I was like 30 minutes and it's going to be over. And I remember thinking like, dang, I kind of hope they do something more with this main character. We had the family call, and then my parents were like, what movie were you watching? That looks super interesting. And I was like, yeah, it's pretty good, actually. I didn't get to the end. I was like, you know what? I wouldn't mind watching it all over again. So we all sat down, we started the movie over, and then I watched it again from beginning to end. And then I was pleasantly, I guess, I was very satisfied with it afterwards. And I very much enjoyed the movie. I've since then watched it at least twice again. So I've seen it probably like 4 times now.
Wow. Okay, I've only seen it twice.
But only because of that odd circumstance.
Right. Well, the other two weren't for any circumstance. Those were for enjoyment.
Yeah, they were just, I was like, yeah, this is fun.
This one was, I think, like around 2 hours, but it didn't feel long. I really enjoyed this one. The pacing was really good. Yeah. Action was really well spaced out. It was really cool. It was
so good, too.
I took notes that, because this is our second time recording for this movie. The first time I had like notes. Oh, fuck, now I can't find them, of course. So anyway, I remember what I said, but basically I was like, I thought it was kind of interesting, going just like right into like the plot and stuff. There's that scene where Niall and Andy are on the plane, and they have like a scuffle, and they're fighting, fist fighting, and the whole thing.
Dude,
and I remember
that
being
fight's
like,
intense too.
I know it was a great scene, but I just remember thinking it was like awkward and weird, and I kind of like had to call myself out because like I was like, it's kind of weird to see her like fight a child. I don't know, but then like in movies like Spider-Man, like he fights adults all the time, so I was like,
That's
I don't
true,
know why I
yeah.
found it kind of strange when they fought. I don't know, but because it was a good scene, it was well choreographed, it was like
Oh my goodness, the
important and really
choreographs was
interesting, and it helped their
amazing.
character arcs and stuff. So I was like, I don't know why I thought it was like weird.
I remember the first time I sat down watching it, every time after, the way that they open the movie is so cool. They do that voiceover thing where she's like talking and then it like goes and then you see like all of that and you just kind of see like bits and pieces, right? And they're all like dying and then they it just like goes black and they open the credits and then it shows you like up until that point. I just remember the way that the opening title sequence came in was so cool. I was like, wow, I am so interested in the rest of this movie now.
The music was really good in this movie.
Oh
That
my goodness, the
initial like
music's
what you just said,
great.
and then it goes into like not present day, but like how they got into the mission or whatever. There's an
Yeah.
awesome track in the background. I don't know the name of it, but throughout the movie, there's like really good like non-orchestral like non-diegetic music that
Yeah.
like accompanies. It's so fucking good, and it's
Like
like
the Frank Ocean song when they're playing that and I was listening to it in her like
yes,
earphones. I was like, "Oh my goodness, it's so
immaculate.
good."
Yeah,
Oh man.
so that was
And
really
like
good.
the cinematography was so good in this film. Like it wasn't necessarily that shots were like really pretty, but the shots that they took were so well placed in this movie. Like I remember watching it and I was like, okay, like there's a scene when they introduce the big pharma guy and
Oh yeah, let
it's
me get
like
you
they're
his
in this
name.
warehouse
Stephen
and
Melick.
they Steve
Melick is his last name, so you can call him Melick.
Steve Millick.
Stephen
Millick.
Melick is the character name.
Interesting. Okay. Millick. I don't know why I don't remember his name. I just remember him as Big Pharma because that's like his thing. He goes like Big Pharma, and it's the guy that played Dudley in Harry Potter, which I was like, what the heck? You mentioned it to me, and then I was like, I can't stop seeing it.
Wait, was it? Hold on. Hold on, before we say that, and then, because I think I walked that back, but hold on, let me make sure. Yeah, it's the guy that played Dudley. Yeah, you're right.
And I was like
The
you
glow
told
up.
me, and then I literally was like, oh my goodness, I can't stop seeing that, and I was like, whoa.
He's gonna be in the
But
FMF for
before,
sure.
yeah, for sure. But like the way that they led up into that like scene, I thought was really cool. And I don't know why I like immediately picked up on it. It's because they're in this warehouse. I think it's Niles right after she like dies the first time and she's in the infirmary and they like have her in the shot and then she like walks out of the shot, but the camera like stays and it doesn't necessarily like focus in, but it kind of like moves to show this like box of medicine or something and it has his company and then from there his voice comes in and then he starts talking and it's his company and I was like I love how they did like it was like subtle but then also
Transition.
just like whoa like it didn't need to be flashy and I really enjoyed that. I was like wow they really did like lead you into that without it being like a whole big deal because all they needed was like the voiceover. Like even if they had just done the voiceover without that, it would have been cool. But I really thought it was really smooth. I was like, nice, clever. I am very appreciative of.
Yeah, the transition was nice. Are you
My
good? What
goodness,
happened?
sorry, my dog jingling a little collar.
Yeah, it had a really good flow. Um, it went back and forth between because there was kind of that there were like a couple stories going on. So it was like the main story with Andy and then the history of
Mm-hmm.
that whole group. And then there was Niall coming from like her history into that group's like at like starting kind of like that's gonna be the B story and then goes into the A story. And then also following like the emergence of the villain and going back and forth. So that for a while
Yeah.
there's no like scene with all of them in the same area. It follows them all
Mm-hmm.
separately, and it did that like really well. It was not confusing. It was really like nicely like divvied out. The scenes would cut back and
Yeah.
forth, which is really cool.
Yeah, they did a really good job of keeping it like cohesive and um yeah, I thought it was great. I loved all of the characters too.
Mm.
There was like I feel like a lot of times you can't really say about a movie that you love every single character, but they did a really good job of developing all the characters and giving them like something about them that makes them feel really real, because even the way that they interact with each other is also a very like human relationship, which is super interesting because the whole movie is about this idea of like mortality and immortality, and it's really cool to see like just like the themes of that and how it plays off of each other, just written like within the characters and how they interact with each other and how they interact with other people. I thought that was a really cool thing for them to do with this movie, because like they're all very friendly with each other. They all know each other really well, except for Niall, of course, until she gets brought in later, because this group has been together for so long. And I think one of the things that assisted kind of like how you can see how much they all care about each other was how dire, I guess, they made the circumstances. Because, again, hopefully you watch the movie. This is a huge spoiler, but they add in that, I guess, that like third rule of the fact that, like, yes, they have more like immortality right now, but at any given moment, it could just like expire.
Yeah.
And that's so terrifying, I guess,
Yeah.
especially with the fact that they just kind of go around trying to save the world and like really just dying like all the time. And then even with that, it's super painful for them to regenerate. And sometimes it gets slower depending on like how bad the injury was. And you can just feel like the way that they like look at each other, the way that they interact each other when things like that happen. They're like, oh my goodness, I hope this isn't the last time. Or like, that's really painful. Like, please come on. Like, you gotta stay with me here, kind of a thing. Like, they do that. And you can really feel how much the characters feel for each other, which makes you as like an audience member really also feel like attached to these characters. Like, you just want them to be okay, kind of a thing. I thought they did so well keeping that consistent throughout the whole film. Like, even though you know they're immortal, every time something happens where they get hurt, you still kind of feel a little bit anxious about it. I thought that was handled really well, because a lot of times they'll have like superhero type storylines where they either like regenerate, or it's really hard for them to die, or they're like practically invincible, and you kind of forget that they like feel pain. And so like, I think Heroes, they had the cheerleader, and she could like regenerate, her bones could heal, and she basically like couldn't die. And I remember like they had to point out the fact that like it hurt, even though she was like, she just would just willingly like, oh, I dropped my cucumber in the garbage or I think her ring falls off in the garbage disposal. There's like a scene in the second season and she just sticks her hand in it and cracks up all of her bones and then pulls her hand out and then it starts healing. And people are like, doesn't that hurt? And she's like, yeah, it does. And I was like, that's so dumb. Like, if something hurt, I wouldn't do it even if I could regenerate. So I like that in this film, they aren't just like actively trying to die. They just know that chances are most likely they won't. Mm-hmm. Instead of just being like completely blatantly disrespecting life and like all physical forms of pain.
Yeah. I would say that a lot of that comes through in the dialogue specifically. So, and I think that that's something that you can attribute to the film, because this one, I think it started out as a comic. Like, there's an Old Guard comic series, and when something's like a written form, or it takes a written form first, I almost feel like making a movie about it sort of compartmentalizes it. So there's not a whole lot that you can include narratively when you're taking something from like a novel or a comic book and then making it into a movie. And so for them to focus specifically on revealing those like intimate features through like solely the dialogue, I think that's interesting, and it leaves a lot like not desired, but then I think that's something that allowed for like a lot of like themes and like emotion to be conveyed in other areas. So it's not like
Yeah.
there was really one overarching like lesson that every aspect of film played towards. You were kind of able to
Mm,
like break it down into like, okay, the dialogue really revealed this about their relationship, but then when you watch it and you see them, like how you're seeing their eyes and that kind of stuff, you notice
yeah.
something else about their relationship. And then when you think about it like narratively, then you notice other things about the relationship and about the story and stuff. So I think that's really cool and something that they did really well. And that's why you can watch it multiple
Yeah.
times, I think, and appreciate it in different ways and anew as well.
Yeah. And it helps that all of the actors in this movie did phenomenal jobs. Like everyone was on point. And like I'm pretty sure this is the first main feature that Niall's character is like in. Like I'm pretty sure she was either in like a television show or like an indie movie before. I can't quite remember, but this is like her first like big
Breakout.
thing, and she did amazing. Obviously, we know Charlize Theron's amazing. The guy Chiwetel. Chiwetel is the FBI guy or the CIA guy. I can't remember which branch he's in,
I got you. I
but
got you.
um,
Copley.
he's like one of my favorite actors because he looks like my dad. And
Oh
I
my
always
God.
tell, every time I see Chiwetel on screen, I always turn or tell my dad, I'm like, Dad, if I ever had a movie about my life, I would cast him as you right now.
Oh my God.
I was like, you right now, whatever age you are right now, Chiwetel's gonna play you. I'm gonna try and get Chiwetel to play you, Dad.
That's so
I always
funny.
tell him that, but every time I see him on screen, I just get a little bit happy because he's also like he's a great actor, and I think that he's able to like play those lines of like he's very versatile, I guess, like very similar to Charlize Theron, where they're very versatile. They can play a lot of different roles. And then the other guy that I was also really surprised was dang it, I don't remember his name in this movie.
I got you. Who?
What's his
What?
character's name? Because he was the guy that played Jafar in Aladdin, and I also had to do a double take because I didn't think he did that good in Aladdin. But
Oh,
in this one, he did absolutely amazing. And I obviously don't know if it was just like the way that Aladdin was written or anything like that, but like there was a very noticeable difference between him as Jafar in Aladdin and him in this movie. Like he did so good in this movie.
so his
I was
name
shook.
is Marwan Kenzari, and he plays Joe in the movie.
They all did absolutely amazing. And speaking of Nikki and Joe, I absolutely love them and their characters. I thought that I don't know. I would probably say that they're my favorites, just because the way that they like talk to each other and they incorporate other people around them. They have this very welcoming and like open and like warm, inviting presence. Even though they can like totally kick your butt and like kill you in like a moment, they have such great personalities. And I honestly, okay, I do feel that their personalities shine through a little bit better than the other ones because the other three characters are very like closed off in, I guess, like their approach to people. Like you've got Niall with her being like, okay, like I'm a Marine. This is completely new territory. My life has literally been uprooted and I have no idea what the heck is going on. So she's obviously got that like defensive, like, I don't know you. What the heck? I am very uncomfortable right now kind of a thing while
Mhm.
still also trying to like adapt to it and survive. And then you've got Andy's whole thing with being like the oldest immortal and having lost like people. And then I know she basically like a lot of the story kind of starts off with her being like, we're not doing any more jobs or something. And the only reason they go on this job is because they get screwed over. And so you have a lot of her emotions there with her being kind of like very guarded the whole time. Booker has this whole thing where like him and Andy are like the oldest ones, right? And he's also very guarded because plot twist, he's kind of the reason they have to do this whole thing. Like he literally was like, yeah, we'll take the job. And then he's like, also, you guys should experiment on us because if you experiment on us, then maybe you can find a way for me to finally like die in peace because I've been alive for so long and being alive kind of sucks, which honestly, like, same. Um, kidding. That is a joke. For legal reasons, that is a joke.
Keeping that in.
But yeah, like all three of them, you can feel that they're very guarded, but Nikki and Joe have this very like warm presence. And I feel like that whole group dynamic is super interesting with the mix of all three of those. And so it's really cool to see those different personalities like mixing together and totally working in a cohesive way.
Yeah.
Like even though Booker betrays them, you never really guess that he's the one. And then even after, you still like you understand why he did it, and you understand why everybody is like forgiving of him. And I thought that that was really cool because a lot of times you're like, why the heck would you forgive them for doing this? And you're like, why are they doing this? Just because you didn't want it to end badly? Like you feel that as an audience member, like all of their emotions and like struggles and stuff.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say something about the fact that you said that they were like really detached. Oh, I can't remember what I was going to say, but I wrote that down the first time I took notes on this. And I feel like that's something, well, I don't know. This is definitely just a perspective and an opinion, but I feel like a lot of times that's what that's like a characteristic. And I won't say that this happened in this movie, but that's a characteristic very common that they give to girls when like they go through a breakup or they experience loss, is they give them that like, they shut them down emotionally. And I feel like they didn't do that to like a negative end in this movie. I think it like was really relevant, and like you said, she wasn't alone. Andy wasn't alone in being closed off. Like they all kind of agreed that it would be wrong to trust people and that kind of stuff. So it made a lot of sense, and it wasn't really gendered, but that was something I picked up on, is like I sort of have like when I watch movies like a checklist where I'm like, oh, do they do all these cliches? And to me that one's like a cliche. I feel like we see that a lot.
Yeah, because it's almost like a cliche that they created to counteract the other cliche of women being too emotional. Was that they made them unemotional?
No, that's the thing, is it has to do with emotion, and that's what a lot of like female characters, it's like, oh, if something they only give them emotional like repercussions or emotional motivation, you know. So I don't know, but then in this movie it worked really well, but just to me, like right off the bat, I was like, okay, like there better be a good reason for this, but there was, and I think it worked really well.
They all have like legitimate reasons for being that way.
Yeah, made sense.
Instead of it just being like, and I'm so glad that for neither Andy or Niall, it's because of like a dude. Because that's also a thing they'll do, is that they'll be closed off because they got screwed over by some man.
Exactly.
And I'm kind of glad that the reason that they're like, because for Andy, it's because like she's just seen too many people die, and she hasn't seen any like positive repercussions for like the reason that she has this power. She's like, there has to be a reason, like, why am I immortal? And she's just seen like too many of her close friends die for trying to save humanity that just continues to be bad. And that's like such a good reason to be guarded, you know? It's not like, oh yeah, I tried to save like this guy and it turns out that like he was evil. It wasn't like that. And then for Niall, it's just like a gut reaction, like, I'm not sure if I'm safe. Like, I don't know what the heck's going on, kind of a thing.
Exactly.
Which is like also just like a very like reasonable reaction to have.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad it wasn't just because of like, oh yeah, actually this guy was a dick and now I have to like deal with it. Like they had other reasons to be angry at the world.
Yeah.
Like, sorry men, you weren't the reason for everything.
And at the core of it, I liked their group trust. So they weren't necessarily like completely closed off. Like they all without question trusted each other, which is really cool. That's probably one of my favorite like character like the motif of the found family and the way that they are from different backgrounds, but they all come together and they all take care of each other like a family. It's like my favorite thing ever. And they don't, that the fact that like Booker was able to even backstab them was because of that, just like uninhibited trust. And that's like the coolest thing ever. Like that is my craziest fantasy, because as a bitch with trust issues, I'm like, whoa, that's cool. Like,
same.
That's cool, bitch. And there was a good scene where and maybe this is part of her character arc, I never really thought about it in terms of like Andy's like emotional withdrawnness. her being emotionally withdrawn and then coming to like trust, I guess, because she does that with Niall. But then there's a good scene where she's injured, so she
Oh yeah,
normally regenerates injuries, like she regenerates her skin and bones, but she gets shot and
it
sustains the
stops.
wound. Yeah. So she goes to it like a CVS and like she doesn't know how to use medicine or bandages. And she asks
Yeah.
like the woman at the counter, or the counter woman asks her like, "Do you need help?" And so she
Hmm.
lets the woman like dress her wound and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like it was really sweet because there's this nice like vulnerability, and it was between like these two women that like are,
Yeah.
and the counter lady asks
Complete
like, "You don't have
strangers.
to explain yourself, like, you know, I got you." And it was like really
Yeah.
nice, that solidarity. And that's like that's part of that like fantasy of just like, you know, it's nice to like entertain that notion that like people are good and people are, you know, kind, and you can trust
Yeah.
like a stranger to in your time of vulnerability and need and stuff. So it was, I love that. That scene stuck with me. It was
And
really
even with
impressionable.
their like dialogue in the end, because I think like at the end she's like, how much like I can pay you, whatever. And the shop lady, she just says like, no, the only thing I asked was that you do something nice to like another person for no
Yes.
reason.
Okay, wait, I
And
think I
that's
wrote it
like,
down. She
oh,
says, "Today
so
I help you,
beautiful.
tomorrow you help others."
Yeah, which
Oh
is such a
god.
great thing to happen, especially to Andy's character, because I mentioned earlier, like she's essentially so guarded because she's seen this like fall of humanity and like they're caring for one another and like basically like empathy for each other. And then she meets this lady, and it's so wonderful to be like, hey, guess what? There's still a glimpse of like hope in the world. And I feel like that does actually, like you were saying, kind of go with her character arc, because she starts off the movie so jaded against humanity. And then the movie basically ends up being like, hey, everything that you've done has had a payoff. Like there have been so many good things that have happened. You just haven't seen it. And so I thought it was wonderful that that's kind of like the first little like I guess like Easter egg as to like what the end of the movie is supposed to be, and it follows through to the very end, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, even Booker, like he does betray them, but he does it because he wants to help. Like it wasn't.
Hmm.
It's definitely like a black and white. He did backstab them,
Yeah,
but in he did it for their benefit. Like he wasn't taking any like outside money from the antagonist. He wasn't on
yeah,
the antagonist's team, but he did it like, you know, for her benefit and the benefit of the group.
yeah. He was like,
So
I thought you guys would want this. Like we've been in pain
yeah,
for so long. We don't have to be if they figure this out, kind of a thing.
yeah. So there's kind
So
of an innocence
interesting. It's such a
there
good
as well.
dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, this movie's great. I think
yeah.
the other thing about this movie is every time I watch it, I like it even more.
Really?
Like every time
Aw.
I talk about it, I'm just like, dang, they did so good. Like there's just it's I don't know, like even like on a first watch, I feel like when you watch it the first time, it does just feel like a regular superhero movie, and you're like, oh, I kind of like it. But really, like the more you watch it, you just find more and more layers of depth to the movie and the film itself, and it's just I love movies like that. Like please give it to me. Like I am here
Yeah.
for it. I want to talk about Andy again
Okay, yeah, yeah, go for
and
it.
her. Um, there was something actually that every time I think about this movie, I can't help but think about also the dynamic of Andy and her like the first other woman that she meets that ends up they both end up getting like kidnapped, and like the whole reason that they have to stay undercover was because of this whole incident that happened where Andy gets saved or like escapes somehow, but the other one gets like she basically is put in like an Iron Maiden and then dropped in the ocean.
Because they got
And
tried for being
so
witches, for witchcraft.
yeah, they got tried for being witches, that's right. And it was like insane. And this is another one of those things where it like kind of just adds to like the just like the sadness you get from this movie. And it's not necessarily like sad, but like the dire situation type thing. Like they have a reason for wanting their identity to be concealed, for not wanting to have like outside people know them, for not having relationships outside of just like the immediate group. Was because this girl gets put in an Iron Maiden, dropped to the bottom of the ocean, but she's immortal. So essentially, she dies multiple times a day for centuries just drowning over and over. Like, that's her entire life. And they're just like, that's the worst possible thing on the, like, that's worse than death. And like, they're like, that's why we have to do the things that we do, essentially. And I was like, that's such a good reason. Also, what the heck? That's so sad. But I also like that they don't just leave it there. They, at the end of the movie, they like bring her back and they're like, yeah, like, I remember Andy says like, I searched for her for years and years and years. Yeah. And then at the end, she's supposed to like, she comes back and like converses with Booker.
Yeah.
And you're just like, whoa, what the heck? Like, is there going to be a sequel? Because I'd be hella down for a sequel. Please give us a sequel. Please. I want a sequel so bad.
Yeah, that was really nice.
I want to know what happens. Because that's insane. Like, that whole deal, oh my goodness. Like, I literally still, to this day, it's been months, chills. I get so worried. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's
it was
so
a love story.
sad.
I saw this movie a long time ago. I have it dated August, so that was the last time I saw this. But I wrote down love story of the two girls. Was there like love? Did they say they were in love? I can't remember.
Not necessarily, but like you feel that they're in love. Like,
okay,
I'm pretty
like
sure
romantic attachment.
Like, I'm pretty sure that was her like first love, greatest love, like some type of love.
Yeah. And I put that it wasn't a really in-your-face story. It didn't claim to be better than her friendship with the men. It was just another relationship that she had.
Yeah, it just hit different.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah.
Because like I really want them to be reunited, and I really hope that there aren't any like bad feelings there.
I know, yeah, because I think it was like important that she had love with like the guys that she was with, but then
like they were all very clearly platonic love.
I don't know. Well, you know what the thing is? It's cool. Is like I feel like it leaves it open to like different sorts of love because I personally don't really see things in terms of like platonic, friendship, family, dating, whatever. You know, like those sorts of like big name sort of things. I feel like that people can have a capacity for attachment and like mutual, you know, romance, not necessarily like romantic romance. I know that doesn't really make sense, but people can be very close and feel very like bonded, like without other, you know, like
that whole idea of like soulmates where they're like the whole idea of soulmates where like your soulmate could be like anybody. It doesn't have to be like the person you're in love with. It could be like your best friend. It could be like someone that you met once but you've never had like a connection with before, kind of a thing.
Yeah, like soulmates don't have to be people that you date or marry.
Yeah, like it doesn't have to be romantic. It doesn't have to be a sexual attraction.
Yeah.
It can just be like just a human connection.
Yeah, and I feel like this movie like opened it up to a lot of different human connections, and they introduced like a lot of, because I said like found family earlier, but then it's like not necessarily like they don't necessarily exhibit the values of a traditional family in the way that they interact and in the way that they care for each other. I like that. I like that. Like
it's
the vague.
They have such a close connection, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, and there was a lot of different relationships, and then in the different identities that the characters had too was really cool. So that was just like one of the many forms of love that I feel, because I feel like all the characters in the end did love each other. I would use the word love, but then you can interpret that in an infinite amount of ways. In this movie alone. So personally, so I just really like that.
No, and you totally can see, like, I like that they didn't, like, have to ease you in to how much they all love each other. Like, it was very, like, right off the bat. Like, there's Charlize Theron, she's on the motorcycle, she gets off, she talks to the guy, and they're immediately, like, old friends again, like, never missed a beat. And even though they haven't seen each other in so long, and then when they all meet up together and they start giving her the food, they give her the babaklava. And she's like guessing where it's from, and they're like betting on it. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I want to be a part of it. Like I want to be a part of that group.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they just have such a great chemistry, and like yeah, they just have such a strong connection that you can feel like the way that they're written, the way that they interact with each other, the way that the actors portray them is just so good.
Yeah, it
In
was
this film.
rich. I like that the most, I think. I almost kind of
Yeah.
don't even really remember the story part, but I am so like floored by how impressive
Yeah,
they were able
it's very
to build
impressive.
the characters and that interconnection. It's freaking
Yeah.
awesome.
And even like the villain, um, I thought it was really interesting to have a villain like that because it's one of those ones where you're like, oh, dang, he kind of has like a good reason, but also like, dang, like, where does humanity go? And I thought it was really cool that they like had that kind of be what the villain is because that essentially is what they've always been fighting against. And so I thought it was a really cool way to bring it back to that, like, that idea of like humanity and like how they care for each other and all of that stuff and like how you can lose it in trying to be like too good, if that makes sense. You see that in Booker's character, but even with Chiwetel's character, the way that his character is like he gives them up and then he immediately realizes, oh my gosh, you guys are completely inhumane and this is not okay. And then goes and like tries to help them out. And then at the end, he's kind of like, they kind of are like, you have to be a part of our group now because we're not going to kill you.
Yeah, he knows too much.
And then he's like, and he doesn't even like, no hesitation. He's like, I was hoping that would be the case, kind of a thing. He's like, yes, this is the one thing I've ever wanted in life. So it's also like a huge win at the same time. They're like, it's our punishment for you. And he's like, this is the best punishment ever. And it's so interesting.
It sets it up for a sequel.
Yeah, I really
sure.
like that idea of like humanity really plays with each character and the whole course of the story. It's absolutely amazing. Like, I eat it up. Chef's kiss.
Okay, let me look up the dudes. Okay, we have to narrow it down to 3.
There's like 4 dudes. Yeah, we have to narrow it down to 3.
Should we just do the main guys? Booker,
the main guys?
Joe, and Nikki?
Dang, that's such a hard choice.
Yeah, let's put the bad guy in there because they're all like
fun.
In the main group, they're all too good, so we have to put
they're too good.
Yeah.
I love them all.
Okay,
I
so
would marry every single one of them.
Let's do Booker. And then let's do the bad guy, Merrick. And then we'll do the one that looks like your dad, Copley.
Okay.
This is gonna be good one. I will volunteer to go first.
That feels a little wrong, but okay.
It's not your dad.
I can't not think of that though.
It's not your dad.
It's okay, I can friend zone him.
I would friend zone the Dudley Dursley guy because I'm sorry. I can't even like in this fake scenario that I'm making up, can't even ignore the fact that he is like that. So I have to friend zone him.
Yeah, he's so like that.
I'll leave him on red. He'll be like texting me all the time and I'll just be like, my phone's broken.
Oh, sorry, new phone, who this?
Yeah, Merrick.
You like text him, your phone's broken.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh my god, I can't find my phone.
Broken.
Sorry. I'll be like, oh my god, I hope you find it. I think I'd fuck the one that looks like your dad, honestly, and then I'd marry Booker.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Dad.
It's not your dad. It's not your dad, though.
I know, I just keep thinking about it. I would friend zone Chiwetel.
Stop thinking about it.
Well, no, because like I want a friend in the FBI or the CIA or whatever with those skills. A good friend to have. I would marry Booker in a heartbeat.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Like, he proposed, yeah.
Yeah.
We're married now.
Yeah.
That's that. He's beautiful.
Yeah, he's cute.
And he's nice. And, like, yeah, totally would marry him. Yeah. Which means, I guess, would be that I would have sex with Dudley.
Took one for the team there. Man. Unfortunately. Yeah. Okay, before we do the Bechdel test, I actually wanted to kind of put a disclaimer. So as the time of, like, filming this, we haven't even released our first episode yet, but I feel like I need to kind of clarify. So when we do the Bechdel test, it's sort of just like to spark a discourse. It's not like an end all, like a one-off, like if it passes it's feminist, if it doesn't it sucks, because it definitely is possible for a movie to have many female characters and pass the Bechdel test and still be sexist or misogynistic or not a good portrayal of women. And it is also, on the opposite end, possible for a movie to only have one female character or some that don't talk that are respectable. So I just felt like I should say that because it is a good jumping off point for us to talk about whether or not a movie is giving like a respectable perspective through which we can acknowledge not only a female presence but then
on screen.
Yeah, because it's important to, like, not only on screen that women are on screen and doing these things, but also behind the scenes it's important and that kind of stuff. So it's sort of just like a way that we can lay a foundation for a conversation about representation of women, basically.
Yeah. Because, like, you can have so many women. Like, I would even say, like, there's early 90s, like, a lot of times I say, like, early 90s and, like, 2000s feminism is kind of like there's a new wave of feminism right now that is, like, separating themselves from, like, the early 2000s, 90s feminism because there's still a lot of, like, misogynistic values.
Yes.
And that's actually where that trope came from, the whole, like, closed off woman, like, unemotional woman, which created another cliche to have to combat. And so I think that it's really cool to, like, talk about because, like, yeah, there's times when you talk about women on screen and stuff like that, but at the same time you have to be respectful about the fact that, like, women are women and they're human beings and they're allowed to exist.
So then the only criteria we're really looking at is whether or not this film has two named female characters that have a conversation at any point that is about something other than a man. So definitely this passes.
Yeah, it definitely passes. Not
right away.
The first scene, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely passes. Like, not only do you have Andy and Niall, where they literally never talk about men, it's always about just their powers and, like, their survival and just existence. But you also have the fact that Niall is a Marine in an all-female combat unit, which is particular to note because when I first watched it, I immediately was like, that's weird. Because I grew up on, like, military bases my entire life. My dad was a Marine. And, like, he retired. And, like, just when I was younger, that was kind of where I was always at. And there were, like, never that many women. Like, in the Marine Corps, a lot of times there's a lot of, you know, like, controversy about, like, which branch of the military is, like, the safest or, like, the most inclusive for women. But I thought it was, like, really weird because women weren't allowed in, like, combat positions for a really long time. And when I watched the movie, I was like, I don't remember them actually being allowed to be in combat anytime soon. Like, and I asked my dad, I was like, that's not a thing, right? He was like, yeah, no, I thought that was a really interesting choice to have in this movie. And I was like, yeah, that is, like, something that's not normal. And so I looked it up, and for the Marine Corps, women weren't allowed to be in combat positions until 2012, which is, like, super recent. It's literally January 2021 right now when we're recording this. And, like, that's crazy. 2012? That's insane. Like, it's still, even, like, if you look it up, it's just like the Marine Corps, like, military website or whatever. And it has a date, and it was like April of 2012 when they released that statement. But that's crazy to me that was a thing. But it's really interesting that like, they chose to put this character in one of those situations where, like, not only is she in an all-female combat unit, but she's also leading it. So I thought that was really interesting because even when I approached my dad about it, I was like, do they really not have women in positions like this? Like, in the area where is she? I think she's in Iraq or Afghanistan.
I can't remember. Do you want me to look it up?
I can't remember, but they talk about it in the movie and they tell you where they are. But wherever they are, they have the scene where she's going into the place, but the only reason they're allowed to enter is because they're women. And so the guy's hiding in this all-female, like, place, because specifically it was so that the men like battalion or whatever, like the male soldiers couldn't enter, and none of the women there are trying to protect him. He's just there, and they're also scared because like he's armed and can kill them. And so the only reason that they're able to successfully like get the bad guy in the scene is because they're women and they're allowed to enter the place. So I thought it was a really cool scene to have, especially like within like the beginning of the movie, and that they're all able to like do something for good that wasn't like, because sometimes like military scenes, they can be very like stereotypical. Like they can stereotype other countries a lot, and I thought that it was more interesting in this movie that they didn't make it stereotypical. In fact, it was more of like they actually included a little bit of the culture of like geographically where they were. So I just thought that was really interesting.
It helped Niall, like she actually passes the Bechdel test before Charlize Theron does. For Andy does.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, because of her battalion and stuff. And then that was something we talked about last episode, that we were going to try and also acknowledge when and where, if they were women of color, when they were able to get dialogue and with who. And so, but she's able to pass it early on. Before Charlize Theron does. So.
And not only that, but also everyone in Niall's like unit is also of color.
yeah, which is like
they're
fantastic.
Also all
really
of color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't something that they acknowledged. And I feel like that's a perfect instance of when a lot of the times when there's like characters that you only see in a couple scenes, they'll just cast white people. But I feel like it's possible to not do that.
Yeah.
In many cases, like whenever there's like a chance for an extra or something, they should be diverse in that decision.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so final thoughts, final rating.
Final rating, dang. I really like this movie. And I think I said in the last episode there was one movie I rated that I would like say is a 10. Unfortunately, it's not this movie. There's like some things that I don't like. Or not that I don't like, but I just thought were like, okay, that was a little dumb. Like at the end, the Dudley guy tries to take Charlize Theron's character's like weapon and like use it, and I was like, dude, you don't even know how to use that. Why are you grabbing it? Or like the fact that like Chiwetel's character, or like Chiwetel's character, he like is in like the FBI, CIA, whichever one it is. Yeah. And I literally at the end scene when they like walk in, him and Niall walk into the building, and I'm like, Chiwetel, what are you doing? Like you're gonna get killed. Like you're gonna die. And I was like, wait, he's fully trained, and I totally forgot about that because he doesn't do anything really like until that point of the movie other than like emotional like choices. So like those are just, they're very nitpicky things. It's not like the rating goes down. I just think that like I've seen movies that have affected me better, and it's just a very special 10. 10 is only given to very, 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 very special films. So I definitely give it like a 9.5.
Wow. Damn. Okay, that's really high. I actually think I'm just gonna give this one like a 7. Because I was getting pissed at myself about the fucking what is it called? Old Guard one.
The Old Guard?
Yeah. I think I'm gonna change it retrospectively. I'm gonna re-rate the Old Guard an 8, and I'm gonna rate this one a 7.
Okay. Because I think I also gave the Old Guard. I gave the Old Guard like a 9.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
9 or 9.5 or something like that.
Yeah, 7
so
was way too low. I don't know
like,
what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, it was something like that. Like I rated it pretty high. I think I said 9.5 to be honest.
I think
or
so
like
too,
a 9. I don't remember. But it was pretty high. It's like a 9.5 because this is a movie I would put on a list. Like if people were like, I need movies to watch. Like I have a lot of family that are always like, oh, you know any good movies out? And most of the time when they ask that, they are really just meaning that they want to be entertained and they don't want to like think too hard or be like provoked for any like deep thought or anything. But they also don't want something bad. You know, like they don't want to watch Wonder Woman 1984. They want to watch something a little bit more depth, but like, you know, something that is also like it's interesting, it's done well, like the characters are fun, the dialogue's good, like something that you really don't have to think about this movie a lot because it's very easy to follow kind of a thing. this is like one of those movies. Like I would probably put this on a list of like movies for people that maybe aren't like film buffs but enjoy good movies. This is a movie for them, for sure.
And speaking of film lists, let's give our recommendations.
Recommendation time.
One. So mine, I was like, if you like this movie, the only one I could really think of, I don't know, that was kind of like the similar like balance of like comedic, but then also there's some really intense action scenes, was Leon the Professional, directed by Luc Besson in 1994. That was Natalie Portman's breakthrough role. It's about a 12-year-old who is an apprentice hitman to avenge the death of her brother by some like corrupt policeman. I thought it was like really fun. It was cool. It sort of has that like fantasy element, not to the point where the old guard, they have superpowers, but like obviously a 12-year-old is not going to become a hitman, or maybe they would in real life, I don't know, but I just enjoyed that kind of thing. I think it's like, I couldn't have watched it when I was a kid because it was like hecka violent, but that's the kind of fantasy I had when I was a kid. I was like, yo, I'm going to grow up, I'm going to be so cool like this, whatever. So I really enjoyed it. If you enjoyed this movie, you might enjoy that one as well.
Another movie by Gina Prince Bythewood is Beyond the Lights. It is by the same director. I wouldn't say it necessarily has the same like vibe or feel of this movie, but it's definitely worth like watching if you are interested in her as a director. I know like her more like iconic film is Love and Basketball, but I personally haven't seen it yet, mainly just because it's so hyped up every time someone says it. They're like, oh, it's so good. And I get a little hesitant about watching really hyped up movies. So I'm trying to like forget about how hyped up it is before I watch it. Because I just don't want to be disappointed, you know? But that's another one of her movies. And then in regards of just like movies that I would recommend if you liked this movie, is the movie Fast Color, directed by Julia Hart. It has the same kind of like element of fantasy. It's like a sci-fi thriller. And it also has to do with a woman that has powers. And they like explain like that whole I guess like the rules of this universe and like her powers and everything like that. And it's more of a story about her mother and her daughter. So it's really cool. They have interesting like editing when it comes to how their powers work and stuff. So yeah, definitely check it out. I enjoyed it. I've only seen it once and I got to give it a second watch through. So, you know, it definitely ends on like an interesting note. It's more indie, I would say, than like mainstream. So I guess like be prepared for that if you're not used to watching indie movies. But yeah, I would definitely recommend that one.
Cool. Wow. Awesome.
Okay.
That is it for today's episode.
Thank you guys so much for listening or watching or whatever you're doing. Feel free to, in the comments, play FMF with us. Definitely comment if you are watching this on YouTube or if you're on our Instagram ever. Go ahead and just like recommend us movies to watch. We obviously have movies that like come on our radar that we both like and would be interested in watching, but we might not have the same I guess like radar that you guys have. So if you guys have any movies that you think would be interesting to hear us talk about or would be interesting to watch, we would love your suggestions. For reasons of the podcast, of course, we're only going to do movies written by, directed by, or starring women, but of course we will probably watch any other movie that's recommended because we love movies. So yeah.
Right.
I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, night, whatever it is. Great rest of your life.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Bye.